Good morning from my side. I'm indeed Alex Driesen, one of the co-founders, late co-founders of Nallian, a company which in the terminology of Everis would be called a technical enabler. Today I want to share with you our experiences as a practitioner with data sharing, a couple of thoughts on why we see data sharing accelerating in our world, but at the same time the objections that we see. Why isn't data sharing going faster? Something we call the zone of hesitation. But before I can do that, I need to give you some context, and I have to do that by explaining who we are as a company, and what we bring to the market. What kind of data sharing are we active in? And trust me, I will not go to my usual deck of 160 slides in the interest of time. But still, Nallian, who we are as a company. So we're a data sharing platform. We help other companies who are part of the same value network or value chain to easily share, exchange, pool, and reuse, correlate their joint data. Why do companies do that? In our space, mainly for three reasons. First of all, to synchronize processes across company borders. Most companies today, most well-run companies today, their processes are already pretty optimal as long as you stay within your own four walls. And then these processes come at the edge of a company, and suddenly you fall back on telephone, fax, telex, and the occasional pigeon to send mail to, or even tam-tam. So there's a clear break there. Secondly, to get availability on data across the whole system instead of only on your own silo. Similar, today's companies have lots of data on their own operations, but they lack visibility on the data that sits in the systems of their business partners, and even more lack of visibility on the data that sits in the systems of the business partners of the business partners. Whilst you can take much better decisions if you have visibility on the whole. Last reason that companies tell us they want to be able to operate as an agile network in a world that behaves more and more as a network itself. Well, that sounds a little bit fluffy, but if you have more time, I could convince you of the truth of that. Why do companies do that with us? Basically because we provide a platform which makes that easy for them. And in that platform, we've built in a couple of principles which we think are crucial to make data sharing work in practice. One of these principles is that each source of data remains at all times in full control of who can use which parts of his data for what purpose. He isn't as a user interface to do those settings himself. Hardly anyone uses this, but having the possibility to do that gives a lot of comfort to the people using such system. Another design principle that we have built into the platform, we only focus on the data. We don't do applications, which basically means that we leave room to a whole ecosystem of applications to sit on top of that shared data to do even smarter things with that data. Taking all dimensions into proportion, when Apple issued an iOS on an iPhone, they took the complexities away from managing the specifics of a phone, and they opened up to a whole ecosystem of application providers who compete each other to death, so that all of us as consumers can have access to things like Waze for free. And I should have mentioned TomTom, apologies, but you get the point. And we are operating in a similar setup. In the long run, our mission is to make the world operate as one. That's a very bold mission, but we strongly believe that there is a lot and far too much waste, slack and cost in today's supply chains, who are increasingly global and increasingly fragmented, which only aggravates the problem. But still, that remains a bold mission, so we're tackling that today one community at a time. So what we do in a community, typically in a community, and think a community around an airport or a seaport, you have lots of parties that need to interact with each other, that need to coordinate. In the old world, they would be connected. They would already be sharing data, but by means of VDI, which is very clumsy, which is slow, which is difficult to set up. So we put a system in the middle. We ask all these companies to connect with our platform, and from there on, it becomes a breeze to share their data with the different business partners in a very granular form. So that's what we do. A couple of examples. One example is here in Brussels Airport, the cargo part, where we set up such a data sharing platform connecting all the stakeholders around such an airport, so that they have one platform to share their data and to synchronize their processes. Why has the Brussels Airport Authority, did they invest in that? Well, first of all, because they had physical constraints with their airport, and if they wanted to grow even further, they needed to find ways to do things smarter, to make better use of the existing infrastructure by adding soft infrastructure on it. That's one driver. Second driver, to make themselves as an airport more attractive to all the people who are using that airport by making sure that they facilitate the very efficient working of the airport. One of the outcomes of this is just one example. Apparently, with customs in Belgium, when you do an export out of the EU, it can take up to a process of 3 to 4 months before you can reclaim your VAT. Why is that? Because the customs, they have difficulties taking all the pieces of data that is needed to do the validation. Today we do that into the system and then come with a clear list to the customs, and the result is that that period of 3 to 4 months is reduced to something like 5 days. It's quite significant in terms of getting waste and slack out of the chain. Airport Authority today has clear visibility on what exactly flows through the airports, which oddly enough they didn't have before. So today they can do their investments much more directed, based on much better know-how. They're gaining a lot of interest around the world with their implementation. They're winning awards all over the place, which means that we as Nallian today, we are solicited by quite a lot of international airports to do the same there. Second case is NextPort, which is a case in which we collaborate with Proximus. I see the person from Proximus nodding, which we are collaborating. I won't zoom into the details of this. It's a similar kind of setup as in the airport, but telling all the benefits here would be a replication of the story. Two other cases. One is cargo stream. It's not linked to a logistical hub. It's more a virtual hub. It's something which was built on top of the Nallian platform at the initiative of Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble, well, as you all know Procter, they're pretty optimized internally. And if they came to us and they said, well, if we want to go through a next layer of optimization, next wave of optimization for our transportation needs, on top of what we already do, we need to start collaborating with others. We would like to collaborate with the Unilevers of this world to see if we have flows of goods which go in the same direction. Maybe we can both pull 5 trucks every day off the road and launch a train. But they cannot start talking with Unilever directly on these kind of things, or they get fines from these kind of people. So they needed a platform to put on their data in an anonymized way, so that other parties, logistic service providers or optimizers, could have a look at that data, and starting from that data come with optimization proposals, which then could be implemented by the Unilevers and the Procters together. And that runs across the whole of Europe. A fourth example, I won't go into the details, but it's digitizing the processes between chemical producers, the tank companies, the people who do the transportation of the chemicals, and then the cleaning companies who clean those tanks. Well, lots of care need to be taken that process runs well, because otherwise you get boom and contaminations. Apparently that was a paper process in the past, which was very sensitive to fraud. Today they're digitizing that based on our data sharing platform. Why on a data sharing platform? Because, well, some parts of the data need to be seen by some actors, but not by all. So you need to be in control. So with that you know what kind of data sharing that we do. I was going to zoom in lots of reasons why data sharing initiatives are accelerating, but in the interest of time, I'll jump straight to the conclusion slides. There are a couple of pressures. One is pressures from consumer expectations. As consumers, we're all used to using all kind of flashy technology, even AR to see if a sofa would fit in our living room, or IoT to reorder washing powder next to our washing machines. And with that, we can come into a mode that we have high expectations for everything that we get. We want always be connected, get instant gratification. So that's one pressure on supply chains, who are still very fragmented and not able to do that in a very fluent way. Those fragmented supply chains, they get pressures from the integrated players. What do I mean with an integrated player? Think first of all the DHLs who completely manage the whole chain and who are able to do things in a very efficient way. That's one type of players, but also the Amazons and the Alibabas, who are today entering more and more in the space of the classical supply chain people, and that is a big threat. So somehow they are trying to find a way to organize themselves to get synchronized, being virtually integrated instead of being one big hierarchical firm. And they're inspired a little bit by the Ubers of this world. We can think of the Ubers of this world whatever we want, but somehow they have shown that by smart usage of software, some companies are able to direct the whole swarm of independent actors in a way that as a swarm it operates almost more efficiently as a dedicated company. So the technology enabling technology is there. Then obviously we have the pressure to do more with less, which is a continuous pressure, and a general awareness about sharing. See this conference, see the buzz around sharing economy, see what blockchain is generating. So all these pressures push towards being more connected and start to share data. Still we see a lot of initiatives, but there's also a lot of hurdles. Once an initiative is taken, like for instance around the chemical cluster, the decision is taken to move collectively, but then still each company has to take that decision and start to operationalize it. Well, you know what I mean. And then specific questions come up, like can I really trust that my data is safe? But obviously that's a legitimate concern. The only answer that we can give to that is make sure that the data sharing initiative is built on a rock solid core. I won't go as far as saying that it needs to be Nallian inside, but don't try this at home just with a couple of developers and then off you go. Needs to be drafted. Another question that's popped up, mainly from people who have read that data is the new oil. So if my data is a new oil, I want money for it. Obviously expecting a return is legitimate, but in this kind of community, setups, the benefits come largely indirectly. They come to the community and then indirectly to the players. Maybe not direct in a monetary way, but often market works that if your business partners get more efficient, then somehow prices will drop too. It's not always the case, and sometimes you need to intervene, but mainly often that is the case. And then if you ask someone, would you like to share your data for the interest of the community? People often say no, but if you come with an application, something which generates value, then it's almost a no-brainer. Apologies for taking the example of Waze again, my friend from TomTom, but if you download Waze on your iPhone and then somewhere around the fly, Waze asks you, would you like to share your location? Well, you're not going to say no, because then there's no point anymore in having a navigation system, so you say yes and it goes automatically. So for people who are trying to set up these initiatives, focus on the use cases and not just on the sharing itself. Other things that we see pop up is I'll join when all the others have joined. If you look to technology adoption curves, you always have people who are completely in the front, who see the benefits, who see the potential, who are prepared to take some risk, and they just jump. You always have people who are later down the curve who want to see that there's absolutely no risk anymore, that everyone else has already joined, and then they join too. But that's also a legitimate position, but if you're part of a community which has to work, which only works if there is enough critical mass, and if everyone joins, then that doesn't really work in such a setting. Add to that free rider problem. At the moment that people have to put money on the table, they always want the other to go first, and then go back in the slipstream for free, and you have the general things like being afraid of change. Now the good thing is that when we bump into this zone of hesitation, nobody questions the benefits. Everyone sees the benefits to the community, and as good as all the concerns are at the level of the individual companies, it's okay, we see the gains, but I want more gain than him, or I want faster gain, and these kind of games start playing. So there's a lot of effort and a lot of leaderships that needed to manage these communities and to bring them together up to a level that they trust each other good enough, well enough, and that they see the vision of what people want to achieve collectively. So it goes beyond the technical aspect of trust. There's also the social trust that needs to be built, and it's a part which is often largely underestimated. What's next? The world as we see it will consist of company and then all kind of hubs that exchange data and do smart things with that data. But is that enough to achieve our mission to make the world operate as one? it is not. Why is it not? Well, it's good that we have all these hubs. This already helps at a local level, but if you look at a container, for instance, that doesn't just sit at a hub, that flows through a whole bunch of hubs. So if you really want to follow a supply chain end-to-end, you need some kind of a view across all the hubs. And there the jury is still out. We don't know what the emerging topology or architecture will become. Will there become some kind of a backbone which tackles the basic logistics information, what Ericsson is trying to achieve in air, for instance? That's a possibility, but you see a lot of pushback because no one wants one company to have all that data across the whole industry. Will it evolve to some kind of a peer-to-peer setup where the hubs talk to each other and each of the hubs provides some kind of just enough API so that basic services can be requested from each other? That's also a possibility. We probably will end up with some kind of a hybrid form. Is it important to know what it will take? No. In my opinion, what is important to know is that whenever such a thing happens, there's room for what we call market-making innovations, not too dissimilar as to when the internet started or the World Wide Web. In the very beginning, you had websites, and then you had portals which aggregated all kind of information on specific websites. You had portals on everything which had to do with pharma, and then portals with this. And then suddenly you had the search engines that said, we don't need the portals anymore. We just scroll the web. We index everything and we start from there. We believe that in the field of structured information you will see pop up similar kind of initiatives. 1 minute. Okay. One more minute, and then I close. And as an industry, well, there is a need for just enough standardization, and there I believe that we're going too slow. I don't think that Europe is going fast enough. A couple of weeks ago I was at a conference from the International Port Community Systems Association, and in the morning we had lots of people, amongst others from the Commission, who were discussing about what needs to be done to make sure that a port in Barcelona can talk to a port in Antwerp. And well, lots of complexity, lots of this, lots of that, timelines in 2022, 25 before we will go there. And then after that discussion, there was a Chinese guy that stood up and he said, and I quote him, "My English not very good, therefore I show movie 1." And then he launched a movie. I'm not sure if it's going to play here, and I'm not going to show it for the full 10 minutes. It's not playing here anyway. But basically, that 10-minute movie that showed what was actually already operational in China. All the things that in the morning we were discussing at the European level about the dreams that we had for the sector. I'm not sure if it was really operational or just propaganda, but I can guarantee you that it was a room like this and it became very, very, very silent. Bon, with that, I want to stop my presentation. Key takeaways. Data sharing initiatives are moving, strong rationale. There's a zone of hesitation where the Commission could help, and there's a sense of urgency to go to standardization across the whole damn thing. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the workshop.
Okay, so thank you very much, Alex, for the presentation, for the interesting presentation, and also for your ambitious goal of making the world being as one. Now we would like to open the floor for questions. We won't have a lot of time, so please, yes, gentlemen, go ahead.
Thank you. Witte Wijsmuller, European Commission, the Cloud Unit, also in DG Connect. I would like to ask you, is Nallian also making use of blockchain technology, distributed ledger technology? And further than that, could you reflect a bit on this technology as a method for sharing data, also in the future, especially in the framework of what you mentioned in the last part of your presentation on the hub of hubs, the network of hubs overall, and of course what is being used in main ports, also in the chemical example you gave.
Okay, it's a very interesting question, and the answer to that is going to take more time than the presentation itself. But blockchain is a very interesting concept if we would try to do what we are doing within Nallian with our data sharing platform. We once asked the question to people from IBM, who are very big promoters of blockchain. They said, like, okay, if we would like to do what we are doing right now with our data sharing platform on blockchain, what are the hurdles that we would bump into? And the reaction was immediately, no, don't do that, because you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you cannot do that. So blockchain is a technology which today is extremely hyped, and is very well suited for very specific use cases. But if you really zoom into recently I was talking to an Israeli guy who is responsible for the port authorities in Israel. He has been working with blockchain for quite a while, and his statement was like, if you have 100 blockchain implementations, 90 of them are using blockchain in a completely wrong way. They're using blockchain because it's good from a marketing, but they're using it completely in a wacko way. And from the 10 other projects, 9 could have been done better if it was done with another technology than with blockchain. So yes, there are very specific use cases for blockchain in cases where you don't have a trusted party, in cases where you need these consensus mechanisms because you don't have a trusted party, etc. But these are very specific and very limited cases for the time being. Apart from that, there are also other consequences of blockchain, as the energy usage, etc., which well, it's not yet a thing which can be used at scale. It has very promising aspects, but we're not there yet. To go back to Nallian, yes, we also use a part of the blockchain thing, but specifically for generating an audit trail, which then becomes immutable, but that's almost a shadow ledger on top of what we use to run the thing operational. If you would like to do that in an operational way directly on blockchain, it would just not work. The performance would not be there. It would be completely overkill. Is that an answer to your question? Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for the reply. Let's try to keep them a bit shorter because we are running behind schedule and we all want to go to the lunch break at a certain point. Is there any other question to Alex at this point?